This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Hi there again. As I record this episode, it's nice and wet. It's raining outside for the umpteenth time in Newcastle upon Tyne. So what I'd like to do is order some sunshine. It might just put more of a smile on my face right now. In this episode, well, we're not going to be talking about rain. We're not going to be talking about sunshine. We're going to be talking about ice and snow. That's right, I have a chat with a former Olympian, Steele, who competed for the USA. He was a decathlete, then he moved across to bobsleigh, and we chat about fear. That's right, we hone in on fear. So you imagine going down a hill, a mountainside in a bobsleigh at 80 miles an hour, having absolutely no control. This is what Dan and I discuss. And Dan also talks about crashing in a bobsleigh, the thoughts about dying, and how he managed to pull himself around really quickly to go again and go back down the hill. I really do hope that you enjoy this fascinating episode.
The big challenges, as I see it, are really the limitations of any athlete's strength and speed, because we all want to be fast and we all want to be strong and powerful. But I mean, a lot of it is just genetics. Are you predisposed to be fast enough and powerful enough? And if you are, then are you also big enough? And if you are those things, then it comes down to fear, because the fear thing is real. And there's been a lot of great athletes have gotten into the sport of bobsledding. But, if they crash once or have a rough trip or whatever, they're never the same. And they don't even know they're holding back at the start, David. They don't. It's a subconscious thing. And it's counterintuitive. When you understand gravity sports and terminal velocity, you know that you can jog off at the start and still hit those top speeds. Or you can hump it off as fast as you can to get a faster downtime, and you're going to hit those same speeds. And so logically, there's no reason to hold back at the start. But that fear thing runs deep, and guys get messed up. Some of them get brain damage, never recover. Some of them die. Or they just get melted skin from the crashes. So these are the realities of the sport. And there's a famous guy that got into it. And I'm not going to use his name because there's no point in it. He's not a bad guy. He's a good guy. But nobody had ever come into the sport with this much talent. He broke all of the records for testing. And the dry land pushes, nobody had ever been better. To this day, nobody's ever been better. He was just off the charts. And he got on the ice and he took his first trip and he about crapped himself, and which is a very common response after the first trip. And he was never the same after that. He was fine on dry land, but when he pushed that sled, I'm not going to say he's average, nothing average about him. He was a little better than average, but he wasn't the freak show that he could have been and should have been. And everybody hoped he would be. And so as a result, people know him as a famous athlete, but they don't know him as a famous bobsledder.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, fear is such a big part of any sport. But yeah, I can definitely see the reasons why in bobsleigh. So, did you have many anxious moments then?
The very first trip I took, it was obvious to me that the sport is crazy and that the driver has no control. That's what I could not believe it. That first trip I took, people are like, "Oh, it's like a crazy roller coaster." No, bullshit. It's not. It's like a crazy car accident, maybe, but you're out of control. On TV, you'll see them tap the wall, come out of the turner, and it doesn't look like much. Inside that sled, you're getting your fillings rattled out of your teeth. I mean, it's like you got T-bone on the highway. It hits so hard, and so. For the most part, no, I was lucky. I had a crash my rookie season in Eagles, Austria, a 2-man crash that was the scariest moment of my life. We were upside down and we were going over 80 miles an hour at that crash. And it was mean, I don't know how much you want me to get into it. I can get as far in as you want, but it was terrifying, and I thought that I was going to die.
I suppose it would be, for me, it would be the next bit. And so how do you pull yourself out of that to then go again?
Exactly. Okay. So we crashed. I thought I was going to die. I didn't, but, you have to use your head to survive these crashes. As a brakeman, you take your head and you press it into the ice and lift your body and the sled up off the ice, so you're not being pressed into the ice on your shoulders or your back, because your skin will melt very quickly at those speeds. And so that's how you survive it. Okay, so absolutely terrifying. Survived it. Okay. And then the reality hits that you have to you get 4 training runs, and 3 of the 4 have to be successful. Well, we just blown our very first one, which meant we had to go right back to the top of the hill and go again. And, I'm just trying to get my wits about me. Like, I thought I was going to die. Okay. I know I didn't almost die, but that's how I felt. And that was very real for me in the moment. And I'm trying to recover from this thought. And then the idea that I have to go right back to the top of the hill and go again was unthinkable. It's like, no way. I'm not doing it. I can't do it. Well, I just made the Olympic team, and you can't show fear. They'll eat you alive in this sport if you show fear. At least back then they would have. And so we have to go back to the top of the hill, and I'm just thinking, I got to get out of this. And there's no way you can't get out of it. There's no way without looking like a total coward. And so I'm going through my head, okay, how do I do this? I can't do this. How do I do this? And so a mental trick I've used my whole life when I'm feeling really anxious is I imagine the worst case scenario, and then I make peace with it. And it served me well. Well, the worst case scenario with this one is we're going to die. This next trip, we're going to crash again. Only this time I'm actually going to die. And I couldn't get that thought out of my head. Like, that was it. Worst case scenario, we die. And so I went into my self-soothing technique, and it's like, okay, you're going to die. Well, you had a good life. This is a great way to go. You've always wanted to go out in a blaze of glory. This is it. Dying in a bobsled. There's nothing sexier than that. That's amazing. So, all right, you've had a good life. You've traveled. You've loved. You've laughed. Okay, this is it. This is where it ends. Okay. And so in my mind, this is what's going on all the way up the hill. I'm thinking, okay, this is it. Gonna die. And let's do this with dignity. And I calmed down, believe it or not. And so by the time we got up there, I was ready to go. I checked in with my driver to make sure he knew the mistake that he made, knew how to fix it. And he did. He said he did. And so we went off again, and we didn't hold back. I mean, we humped it off, because if we're going to die, let's die with dignity and push this thing off like men. And we didn't crash. We almost crashed, but we didn't crash. And so the relief, feel like a man with a second chance.
After listening to this episode, it is safe to say that I will never be stepping foot in a bobsleigh, ever. That's right, fear would grip me by the throat, and it doesn't sound like a great deal of fun to me. I'm going to stick to my daily ice baths to stretch myself and to overcome fear. Now, on this topic of fear, I come across it every day in my work, whether it's supporting the footballer who's terrified of making mistakes, the cricketer who's terrified of not scoring runs, the rugby player who's frightened of the bigger, more physical opponent, the gymnast who's frightened about falling off a beam, or the golfer who worries about missing a 3-foot putt. I come across these every day. But the fear of death, well, that is extreme, and it is a serious, serious fear. So how do you actually overcome that? Dan's approach was saying the goodbyes to life and really thinking and feeling that worst case scenario. I'm going to share with you another idea. I'm guessing that you found yourself in a cycle of negative thoughts before, where maybe you've ruminated on past mistakes, you've worried excessively about future performance, and you have imagined in your mind worst case scenarios, but you haven't had a great deal of control over them. And you're not alone. Obviously, Dan was a top athlete there, and he's felt that way, as have many, many athletes. So how do we break that cycle of negative thoughts and excess anxiety, fear, or self-doubt? Firstly, when we do have an awful lot of negative thoughts, our body tenses up. That's right, physically we tense up. So the first thing you want to do is allow your body to relax. You could do this by sitting down or standing up or lying down. Essentially what we're going to be doing here is a body scan. So what you do is you breathe, that is you focus on your breathing. So you're inhaling and you're exhaling slowly whilst focusing on a particular body part. And you notice the sensations of this body part. And the trick is to then allow that particular body part to soften and relax. You need to stay still when you do so, and then you move across to another body part. And you repeat the process, again allowing another body part to soften and relax. And you might spend about 30 seconds to 45 seconds on each particular body part. So you could go on for about 10 to 15 minutes if you wanted to, where you scan all different body parts from your head all the way down to your feet. And by doing so, what this does is it prevents you getting carried away by all of those negative thoughts. Though there is a reality. There will be negative thoughts that do pop up when you do this body scan technique. So as you're scanning your body and a negative thought arrives, the key is just letting that negative thought simply float away. And then you just take yourself back to the body part, noticing the feelings and sensations. So your body then relaxes more and more and softens. And then another negative thought pops up. And again, you just let it float away. You don't judge it. You just accept it, let it float, and then go back to the body part, allow it to soften and relax, and so on. You just continue this cycle, and essentially what you're doing here, as I say, is a body scan, which is grounded in mindfulness. And what it does, it allows us to process some of these negative thoughts, and allows any anxiety or fear responses to reduce, and it can help shift these negative patterns and break that cycle. So in a performance context, you can focus on what it is that you need to do and focus on the present, as they say. Now I've alluded to the fact that it might take you 10 minutes or 15 minutes or longer if you go and scan every single body part. For some people, that's just too much. So what you could do is just simply start with 2 to 3 body parts and do it for somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. And then just repeat that process day in, day out. Maybe for periods, when you've got more time, you can increase it so it's a 10-minute body scan. And believe me, with repetition, you will get better at this. It will be like a skill that you perform in your sport. You will improve. The reality is, in sport, in a performance context, you might only have 30 seconds before you're about to execute a skill. And the better you get at this means that when you are in that performance context, when you are under pressure, that you'll actually be able to dial into your body for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and use that as part of your routine, where you'll be able to dial back that fear and anxiety response. It's something that I've personally experienced for a while now and practiced for a while, probably going on for about 10 years, I would say, since I've been in this profession. And I'll give you an example of how I personally use it. So I play golf to a decent level. I play off a 2 handicap, and supposing I've got a 3-foot putt to win a match, or if I've got a good card going on, a negative thought will pop in my head about the fact that if I miss it, it's obviously not a good thing. And sometimes in golf, you might be standing there waiting 2 or 3 minutes before you actually get the opportunity to play your putt because you're waiting for your playing partners. So more negative thoughts can arise where you start questioning your technique. You might get ahead of yourself a little bit and you start predicting what's going to happen. And I find that this exercise works really, really well. Just helps me completely zone out, and I'll spend, whether it's 30 seconds or up to 2 to 3 minutes, where I just place my attention in my feet and allow my feet to soften and relax. And what I tend to find is my thoughts start to slow down, and I really do end up focusing on the present moment. Switch off from past poor putts potentially, or trying to predict the future, and then when it is my turn, I'm ready, I refocus, and then I just go and take the putt. I'm talking at it from a personal level, but it is something that I also teach the athletes that I work with, because I see this as a big skill that can help anyone. And as far as skills go and helping people, well, please do sign up to the Mental Edge. It's a newsletter which I send out on a fortnightly basis. It has lots of content, lots of tips, lots of tricks, lots of resources that can help you put aside fear and stay in the moment. I'll also put some other resources to body scans in the show notes too. until Tuesday, where my next football-related episode will come out. I hope you have a lovely few days. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.